me pose the first question, if I may, to Mohammed from the AfCFTA Secretariat, and ask the question. We are using, as I said in my opening remarks, an instrument that was developed in the 1950s. And at the same time, we are seeing the questioning of an order that is obtained in the world since the 1950s. I like the convergence. Let me get your opening thoughts in respect to how we use the SEZ concept appropriately in this environment, while at the same time making sure that we are not just being shaped by the events that are being developed elsewhere, but we are active participants.
No, thank you so much. Maybe before diving on how the AfCFTA tackled the SEZ, I want to maybe emphasize that regardless of the circumstances and everything that is happening around us in the world, I think from the inception, from the plan of boosting intra-Africa trade, I think we have a blueprint, we have a project that Africa is following and taking a serious and bold steps to implement it. And the key and maybe blueprint project for the Africa economic transformation is the AfCFTA. We have seen the AfCFTA being through the negotiation, the AfCFTA being upgraded from being only market access or a trade agreement that is only concerned about goods to have a giant maybe legal instrument that include instruments that speak about trading goods, trading service, competition, investment, digital trade, and most recently, women and youth in trade. So Africa has its own narrative, has its own agenda, regardless whatever happening in the world. I think what is being presented against Africa when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to maybe the newly introduced tariffs actually is not only being unfair to Africa, it is actually incorrect in the calculation of what is the relation or the economic relation with Africa, because scoping and making zoom on the trading goods aspect of the equation, first of all, it's missing the fact that most of the products that we are exporting, mostly it is crude oil and raw material that is by itself unfair for Africa, but also it is missing that, in fact, we are sending from Africa to the West, I think annually over 5 billion in transactions when you transact within Africa, missing the fees for digital trade, missing the fees on all the service sector. And maybe going back to your, or to the point of the SEZ specifically, the philosophy of trade agreements in general, when it comes to SEZ, varies, and the majority of trade agreements, they do not allow the product that is manufactured in a special economic zone to benefit from the preferential arrangement. That is not the philosophy of the AfCFTA. In the AfCFTA, we adopted the approach that fit Africa, that fit the African industrialization. In our case, we have seen a success stories in the special economic zones in Africa. So that's why we selected the model that suit Africa. We didn't follow the maybe the international norm by excluding the SEZ. So in the AfCFTA, our Council of Ministers adopted the special economic zone regulation that allowed the products of the SEZ to benefit from the AfCFTA. So meaning if you are operating here in a SEZ and you qualify or you maybe meet the rules of origin that has been set by the AfCFTA, your product can enter the AfCFTA market and benefit from the AfCFTA. That is huge selling point for the SEZ in Africa, and I think this is the trade policy approach for the AfCFTA to promote the SEZ in Africa.
Yeah, and I know it's early days yet, if I may say so, but I just wanted to get a sense from you in terms of how it has worked so far, that integration that you are attempting to bring, the innovation that you are introducing into this.
Early days when it comes to the regulation, I don't think it is early days when it comes to Africa adopting SEZ approach. We have seen that is building on this regulation. We have seen companies like Arise increasing their level of investment in Africa, taking advantage from this regulation. We have seen success stories, for example, in Gabon, transforming the economy of the country from maybe exporting raw material to exporting value-added products. So we have seen the effect and the promise that this regulation and this market access bringing to the investments in Africa.
Absolutely. I'm going to say to our business people, I'm going to skip you for now because I want to talk to the government people, the people who are doing the action on the ground. And if I can begin perhaps with you, not Mohammed, sorry, Ahmed. Let's start perhaps with the Somalia experience in respect to the special economic zones before we talk about how you've integrated them into the AfCFTA.
Yes, thank you very much, Director of the panel. First of all, allow me to thank the people and the government of Djibouti, their hospitality since we arrived yesterday. Maybe some of the audience have had bad news from Somalia, but again, we have good news. If you look the economic policies the economic policy reform that our current government undertake in the last decades, we succeed to reform our debt relief. Now our debt is 6% of our total GDP, and that is very good positive compared to our LDCs countries. And also, we have successfully joined East African Community, which is one of the most integrated regional economy in the continent. And again, we are part of AfCFTA. We have signed but not yet ratified. We are also a member of IGAD, and COMESA, and so on. Our government is going to take trade policy liberalization. And I think it is very good and positive compare other negative information that maybe you have had from Somalia. But if I come to your question, Director, yes, strategically Somalia locates a strategic position to the global, where we can connect Africa, Asia, and Europe, and also America, where Somalia has also the longest coastal line area in the continent, 3,303 kilometers square. And if you look the connectivity of global trade, the logistics, mostly we use ocean logistics, the sea. If we look the barriers that our continent is facing is basically takes place the road. So we can connect from the north to south, and even from the south to the East African as a region. Somalia also took an economic policies that also support our special economic zone. And if you look, our government is structured, we have federal system, and we have almost more than 6 federal member states, where each member state has its own seaport, and also has their own special economic zone that connect within Africa, beyond Africa, to the global market. But again, also we have the challenges, because there is no challenges. Yes, we have challenges, in particularly the fragmented legal, because we need our legal reforms also align with AfCFTA protocols, in particularly trading goods, investment protocol, and so on. But again, also, we have also challenged on infrastructure, because we don't have railways that can connect from Somalia to Central Africa to West Africa. So we have had challenges, and also we have an opportunity. Thank you. That's our experience. Thank you so much.
Interesting. Thank you very much indeed. Rebecca, if I can come to you and ask your input as well, experience in terms of obviously building these special economic zones. And again, I'm going to come later and ask the question around how we build the AfCFTA in the whole special economic zones strategy.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. If I may share the Ugandan experience, we, like the Shannon Free Zone, we started with a scheme that was purely export processing in nature. And the export processing zone, which we were looking at the time, way back in 2014, was intended to ensure that the companies that want to operate within the export processing zone must have the capacity to produce, to add value, and export more than 80%. But the dilemma over the years that we experienced was that we had export processing zones that were purely producing for international markets. And if we reflect on our performance, we noted that not much of what was being produced in these zones was going into the African market. Most of it was going to the EU, to the US, to Asia, to mention but a few. But the other dilemma we noticed with the export processing zone, which was really the traditional kind of scheme that was implemented earlier many years ago, was that it was not also enhancing backward linkages. The scheme was in such a way that it allowed operators within the zone to import. And what were they importing? They were importing high-value products. They were importing high-tech intermediate inputs, agricultural equipment, fabric, and others. So we noted that there was not clear integration of the small and medium enterprises. There was not clear integration of the local clusters around the zones which had capacity to supply, but they were missing out. They were the missing middle. So we evolved in line with, because the export processing zone scheme is anchored within the East African community. There was a demand that companies that were operating in this scheme, as we integrated more under the East African community, their market was narrowing. Because when we say export, if, say, an export processing zone sold its products within the EAC, that would be, or the East African community, that would be a local sale. It wouldn't be categorized as an export. Yeah. So we had to evolve with the times, with the needs, with the need to integrate, with the need to promote cross-border investments. We had to actually migrate from the export processing zone model to the free zone, to the special economic zones, which we are now promoting. Thanks again to the East African community, because under the East African community, we were able to adopt a special economic zone policy, which integrates the entire ESC in terms of the policies, in terms of the schemes that you can develop as a private company. So the scheme evolved from just being export processing to integrating service-related economic zones. You can now set up tourism zones. You can set up financial zones. You can set up science and technology zone. In fact, you can also set up agriculture zones or livestock and many other types of schemes.
And that's interesting, because if you remember, the gentleman from Arise in the morning spoke about the importance of integrating the local economies, and you are already implementing it. Is it working better?
Yes, it is working better, and this is why. We have seen a migration from just having single factories. If we look at the studies that have been done by UNCTAD, much as the reports are saying there are 200 special economic zones, when you actually analyze the types of zones, most of them are single factories. So that is where we started in the past. So now we are looking into evolving into special economic zones, which will help the African continent put up large scale. We are talking about large scale, not single factories, but large scale zones that have an interplay between production, between processing, between services, to create an interface where you live, you work, and play, where you have the industry benefiting from agriculture and also benefiting from services. So clearly within the AfCFTA, within that special economic zone, we are moving into the right direction.
Yeah, and I think it's an important question to address, because we're talking about here instruments that were set up as national policy now being taken into to perform a role that feeds into an international framework in the sense of the AfCFTA. So we're going to come back and ask how we do that. And I think maybe, luckily or happily for you, President Donald Trump is solving your problem for us, because he is cutting back on that support that we've taken for granted through the years. Even the EU as well, European governments are cutting back on aid and saying, hey, we need to focus on our defense more. So maybe part of your challenge has been sorted. But you have raised a number of important issues there. You're talking about harmonization, and I think the AfCFTA Secretariat has got to be talking about that without question, and I'm sure they would love to answer part of those questions. And you're talking about the funding issue as well as, of course, the infrastructure that we require in order to be able to move these goods across our borders. Let me begin first from an ECZ perspective, from a Djibouti perspective. Are you finding it easier to get into the regional markets using the SEZ concept? Because that was the problem that I think we were told was solved by the African trade ministers in 2023 in February, if I'm not mistaken. Very quickly, if you can, before we go to Felix.
Yeah, if I just mention concerning how it's organized, for example, the free zones in Djibouti is completely different from the special economic zones. Here in the free zone that we have, you can implement and put in place different types of activities. It might be trade, it might be industry, it might be, let's say, the services. And in terms of special economic zones, it's something that we have got a clear industry items. For example, if it is agro, it's agro. If it is, chemical, it's chemical. But here in Djibouti is different. That's one. Second, we don't have any taxes. We have zero taxes in Djibouti. That it's very important. Sure. In the special economic zone, you have to pay some, let's say, the percentages for the countries, if my memory is good. Mm-hmm. This is the difference between. And Djibouti have got another advantage that we have got since 1949. We are linked with the dollar since 1949. It means that you don't have fluctuation of currency. Mm-hmm. If you invest here in Djibouti 1 billion, you need tomorrow to take out from Djibouti to anywhere in Zambia or in Senegal, you can. Nobody can ask you whatever it is and how much you get it or how you take it out with your authorization, with the authorization of the administration. But some other countries in Africa is different. Mm. That's the standards that we have to put in place and give chance for each and every country to have the same level of businesses. That will give more intra-African, let's say, dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in part, again, I think the AfCFTA Secretariat will come to you and say, this is the reason for the Pan-African payment systems that's been put in place to ensure that we take out that currency risk that you're talking about, the costs associated with it. Felix, if I can come to you, I've made you listen to everybody else because you made everybody listen to you as well. But I want your thoughts just in respect to the practical experience, and you have been a trader, you are part of the Guardian Trade Initiative. So perhaps if you can give us your opening thoughts to how you have seen it work, and then we move on to talking about how we can make it work better. Because you were sharing with me earlier part of your frustration where you are almost put in a situation where you are supposed to carry goods before you know what your customer wants.
Thank you so much. Maybe first I can give a brief background of what we do at Real Sources. So Real Sources Africa is basically a trade facilitation entity powered as a trading company on behalf of Kenya to the African Continental Free Trade Area. And our main role as a trading company is basically trade facilitation. I summarize ourselves in three main pillars. Our main KPI is how many containers are we moving at a time, how many contracts are we signing, either for contracts for supply or for distribution. At the same time, how much of trade finance are we supporting our SMEs and our cooperative societies access? From an SEZ perspective, I think we have to rethink on a couple of things. Number one, are the products that we are championing to have production done in the special economic zones, are they in demand within the African context? One of the biggest challenges that I've experienced as a trader, and I'm talking as a trader who's been an SME, a youthful SME, to the AfCFTA Secretariat. One of the biggest challenges I've realized is that sometimes we don't produce towards the market that we're targeting. Last year, we rolled out a program whereby we are doing 1,000 containers of products within the African continent for a period of 12 months. We rolled out in November. As of today, we've done around 217 containers. And one of our biggest challenges has been, one, people don't understand what we are producing. People don't even know some of the products that we are saying we have as a continent. And an example would be, people don't know that Kenya has one of the largest helmet manufacturing plant in the entire continent.
Oh.
And these are conversations that you get helmets that are coming all the way from China.
Yeah.
And so many African countries are importing helmets from China, where else we have a production entity in Kenya that can do so. At the same time, you get to a point whereby, as I mentioned earlier, demand. If we are setting up plants or setting up special economic zones reacting to a demand of a certain product, investment will follow that particular demand. One of the things that most SMEs scramble with, we all talk about trade finance, or we all talk about infrastructure finance.
Sorry, but before you go there, we need to clarify this issue of understanding what your customer wants. And I wanted to bring in the Intra-African Trade Fair and ask the question, in your view, is it not doing the work that is required that would help you to connect you to customers who want the products that you have? Because at the IATF, you go and you exhibit, right?
That's one of the solutions.
That's one solution.
No, intra-Africa trade will not be attacked by only trade fairs or diplomacy. We will need to go to the market, understand what these people want from the market. And our ambassadors in some of these markets, one, we have distributors who already exist in the market. These are the people who provide the products on the shelves for the consumers to be able to take. The question is, why are they not buying our products? One of the biggest conversations I've had with some of our distributors from DRC is for Kenyan products in particular. They always accuse us of not being consistent in supplying. Another thing they'll always accuse us is that, the branding aspect, whereby you'll come in as a distributor, support the manufacturer in introducing your product in the market, and then 5 months down the line, I have another supplier with a similar product in the market.
Different
brand. There's aspects they want exclusivity. Is it the high time we start talking about contract manufacturing? At the same time, you have a challenge of logistics. But the elephant in the room, we will set up the infrastructure that we want to invest in. But is our infrastructure based on the demand that is being created in the market? And I give an example. If today we were to do a road, and I use this on a village perspective, you have a beautiful village, you want to do a road from the village to town to be able to carry your fresh produce. See, it's much more valuable saying that we are trying to do the road or tarmac the road to be able to take the vegetables from the village to take to the market. Because if you don't have the vegetables to carry from the village straight to the market, then that investment is not really making sense.
Sure. And I think you are going some way in helping to answer as well as ask the question that I posed earlier around aligning the special economic zones policies to the continental body and framework that is the African Continental Free Trade Area. Because now we are talking about these instruments that were set up for the national cause, as she said earlier, designed to export, but now we are saying we want to integrate it within the African framework. So I'm going to go back to Mohammed and ask, please feel free, everybody, to come in and chip in as well in how we can answer this question. How do we square the circle, as it were? You get my point? The issue of special economic zones, which are developed at a national level, aligning them to the African Continental Free Trade Area, a framework that covers the whole of the African continent, and we're saying the two must work together. How do we do that? Are we doing that?
Okay. Are we doing that? I think the answer is that we are in the process. You will never reach to a stage or a situation where you say we have done enough and
sure.
let's move on. So it is a work in progress. The second point I want to make, it is never for the AfCFTA as a continental project to prescribe every single aspect of the national intervention or the national policy around SEZ. Because SEZ for Djibouti means something different from the SEZ to Gabon, means something different for Uganda or Nigeria or what so on. It depends on the natural resources or the national input that is available for the country, the geographic location for Djibouti, for example, the model of free economic zone or free zone work for Djibouti. It might not work for other countries.
Sure.
So that's why when we identified what we mean by these zones in the AfCFTA, we didn't follow the international standards by calling them free zone or industrial zone. We just call it special economic zone because it is different from a country to another. Now, how countries can build on this SEZ, it is simple and it is happening. You market yourself as a country to the rest of the world. Come and invest in my special economic zone and have access to other 54 African countries.
Yeah.
This is how you benefit from it. And you need also, the next step, you need to realize that when it comes to special economic zone under the AfCFTA, we don't have free bus for anything that is coming from outside to go through a free zone and enter our market. There is the rules of origin. And the rules of origin is the economic passport for the goods. So you need to have a minimum or a set of African input in the process, or you need to manufacture or do added value before you can say this is African product and can benefit from the market access that the AfCFTA is providing. So we need to build on that policy. So if you have the market that you should target, you should use this market to market your country, the investment in your country, and you need to have incentives that is scaling up the level of production, the level of value added. So that's how country need to design their internal national policies around the continental SEZ regulation.
Yeah, you've gone on to answer the next part of my question, which was going to be what tools can these countries use to make sure that their special economic zones are benefiting from the creation of the AfCFTA. But Rebecca, you can come in as well, and I'd like you to come in as well and answer the question. When you are framing your policies around those special economic zones, are you thinking about the AfCFTA? Please be candid.
Allow me to touch a little bit on the submission we got from Mr. Chege. I think that issue of information sharing and the aspect of stakeholder partnerships or PPPs, both nationally within the region, I think needs to be enhanced. And this is how. When I talk about the stakeholder partnerships, we need to see the roles of governments enhanced. We have, within at the national level, we have the ministries of trade. We have export promotion councils. We have, again, the special economic zone authorities. I think more collaboration, working with the trading companies as they do their work of creating a connection or linkages between the producers and buyers could take advantages of economic and commercial diplomacy. We have these embassies which in respective partner states, which could be the points of contact. If you're producing, if the trading companies are getting goods for the SMEs, how can we work with the embassies in those countries where they are targeting to export, to make sure that they reach out to this buyer who needs the product that they are making? Or how do you work with the export promotion councils? Because that's their work, to find markets. So instead of looking for markets in EU, instead of looking for markets in US or Asia, why aren't we using these embassies? Why don't we create within, say, the Special Economic Zone authorities, the AfCFTA desks that can work very closely with these trading companies to ensure that, yes, there is that connectability between what you're producing and the market where you're selling. So again, I think within the AfCFTA, these tools have been put in place for us. But how should we use them innovatively to make sure that we fully support the private sector to benefit? Otherwise, the tools will be there, but we're not using them. So we need to work more innovatively and see how we use the existing frameworks within the strategies. Of course, the other aspect of sector prioritization will matter within our respective national development plans. We need to come up with sectors and prioritize those sectors where we are sure we have the capacity to produce, but also we have the capacity to export and also diversify into the markets where we would want to sell. So again, I want to emphasize the aspect of stakeholder collaborations, right? Working with the national policies, working with the ministries at the national level, then see how we integrate them, working with the AfCFTA Secretariat to ensure that the products that are produced within the special economic zones, clearly we can find buyers from respective countries within the Africa continent.
Absolutely. You're helping me ask another question around these special economic zones and building regional value chains, because that's part of the whole integration of Africa project, isn't it? But let's park that question for now. I wanted you to come to answer my question that I asked in respect to what, from a government perspective, you need to do to align better with the AfCFTA. Is that new structures of communication, or is that still through the ministries of trade?
To me, it will start with clearly at the national level, ensuring that the policies and the regulations that are in place are aligned. We have scenarios where, of course, the AfCFTA has provided us with the SEZ regulations, but within certain state parties, the national policies have not yet been aligned to fit within the AfCFTA protocols and also some of these tools and mechanisms that have been developed. Then again, I would like to talk about the fact that within our respective partner states, we need again to evolve from living investment in the special economic zones to purely private. We need to come in as a government to support the private sector by ensuring that we provide the enabling infrastructure that connects to these special economic zones that are set up especially by the private sector. We know the importance of the strategic locations, but also within, sometimes within the state parties or at the national level, we have scenarios where the private sector has invested and the marketability of the special economic zones in terms of attraction has not been enforced, as governments have not extended the enabling infrastructure, and yet again within the AfCFTA, we have enabling tools like the adjustment fund,
Yeah.
where we can source some of this funding to
Sure.
provide the necessary logistics. So that support from government needs to be enhanced.
Yeah.
But also, I would say an element of capacity building
It's required.
is required, because some of these tools are available, but there's an information gap where we have not been able to educate the private sector on some of these opportunities that have come into play,
Yeah.
to make sure that the private sector or special economic zones actually benefit from these tools. So we need to step up on the capacity building.
Absolutely. Ahmed, if I can come to you. Yes.
Thank you very much. I think your question is a very good question, and I would like to focus on, if you look the special economic zone in Africa, and if you look our legal professions at AfCFTA level, this SEZs is mainly focus on, have relationship with the protocol in trading goods, the protocol on investment, and the protocol on competition. So as a partner state, we need that we respect the driving principles of the agreement, which is the non-discrimination. So we do need that our special economic zone must respect policies, must respect the AfCFTA, most favored nation, and the national treatment, where we treat all equal treatment. Second point is the rules of origin. As the director of trading goods just mentioned it, products have also passport, as we have passport, so that they enjoy the preferential tariff. So our special economic policies has also made AfCFTA rules of origin, so that they comply and have that treatment or on preferential tariff. Another thing also is subsidization and also incentives roles. We also need that our investment incentives offered to our special economic zones must comply our competition, AfCFTA competition protocol. And last but not least is the customs procedures and the trade facilitation that our special economic zone policies. We need that our customs procedures should be digitalized, so that we overcome the challenge of non-tariff barriers. And that's why we have NTB portal and at AfCFTA level. So that was my input. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I'm going to give you the last word in terms of the rounds on these questions before we open up the floor to the floor, so we can get input of the others as well.
The question concerning how it might be the, let's say, the special economic zones for Africa, I think it's in my perspective, or in my opinion, the Secretariat of AfCFTA was being created by the head of states. Head of states must sit together, see the opportunities for the continental free trade agreement that they sign, and put in place a common interest for all, let's say, the countries who are interested on this issue. And I'm sure that today everybody is interested, except the one who forget it. Just to give you one example.
Yeah.
I was been in Durban 2 years back, participating 2 years or 3 years back. Yes.
IATF.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, at that time. And I was discussing with one company who is exporting sugar. They said that they export 95% of the goods to US.
Sure.
And they don't have any interest for Africa. I hope that what Trump done will give opportunity for the business community in Africa. And I call the same company now. They are interested to talk. That's one of the reasons why intra-African activities will increase substantially.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that in 2 or 3 years, if Trump continue the way that he started,
Yeah.
that is good for the business of Africa.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the trade for Africa
Yeah.
will be 50%.
Absolutely, absolutely. A very important
sure.
point that you mentioned. Let's certainly hope that this crisis makes us open our eyes and look at ourselves before we begin to look outside. I'm going to open the debate to the floor. The rules still apply. Identify yourself, your organization, and if you can be a better question framer than me, all the better. Do we have a microphone roving around? Yes, we do. Do we have any questions, contributions, comments? I think everybody is satisfied with the way we have run the debate so far, right? Okay. While you are thinking about your questions, if you do have a question indeed, I'm going to come back and ask the question of how do we, he raised the issue of harmonization, and I'm going to take that issue of harmonization a little step further and ask it around how we frame harmonization in respect to competition. Because for me, that's one of the big challenges, isn't it? Because we've got countries that are trying to take advantage of their resources and their position to try to attract investment to themselves. But at the same time, you have a framework that is saying, can't we find a way of trading amongst each other so that we increase intra-African trade from the below 20% we're talking about now to the 50% that you would like? Anyone want to take up my question, please, gentlemen? Yes, please, go right ahead.
Thank you. In terms of competition, I look at it a bit more differently. You see, each and every African country has something that they're known for. There's something they're really good at. And my take is, why can't we invest more in some of these resources that are already available in some of these countries? And we, in other markets, can be the recipient as we also produce something else to be the recipient to other kind of countries. I don't believe more in competition, but I believe more in the complementing of each other. We don't need to produce each and everything separately as a continent, but we need to see how best can we have some countries in the continent doing, for example, pharmaceuticals. And we being the major off-takers of pharmaceuticals and supporting them.
Yeah.
Why can't we have other regions to support in terms of value addition of food? And an example would say East Africa is, it's rich in terms of agro-produce. Why can't we say that East Africa will feed the entire continent in certain areas?
So the key player here is the AfCFTA Secretariat.
Yes. And the conversation should be, if we are able to get a way to get some of these countries to just focus on exactly what they're able to do at the best, and others can focus on different kind of space, and then we can meet each other in the market with products that are much more valuable for us to be able to support the entire continent.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so maybe I will try to complement what Felix said, and actually recall what he said earlier about sometimes we produce a product that is not required, or we don't know what is the needs of other countries. And I will make 2 points. The first point is, what is the AfCFTA bringing to the new the equation in Africa? If you look for East Africa as an example, the majority of East African countries, they produce more or less, or the major production for them is more or less the same, whether it is coffee or tea. So they don't have what we call comparative advantage when they deal with each other. When you bring the AfCFTA to the equation, now you introduce the East to the West, and to the North and to the South. So instead of getting the coffee or the Nescafe from Europe, you get directly the coffee from East Africa, or you can get the cocoa powder or the chocolate directly from West Africa. So that is not competition. It is comparative advantage of two partners who can complement each other. That is a very simple example, but that's happening to some extent in all sectors. The second point, you heard Felix speaking about the trading companies concept. And we heard in the morning Arise speaking about also the ATDC, which is the Continental Trade and Distribution Company. And the main philosophy behind the trading companies, it was initiative of the AfCFTA Secretariat. We invited all the countries to nominate one company that work as an aggregator. And the philosophy behind that is to be able to aggregate from the SMEs, but the most important part is, if you are a trading company, you should be able to import and export. And by creating a network, Felix, and that happened actually, has a contact of...
He needs to answer the question actually whether he also imports, right?
Yes. Has a contact with a trading company, for example, from Egypt or from South Africa. You say, I'm interested in getting pasta from this country, but I have a product also I want to sell. So they negotiate their bargaining power. They let their bargaining power work out. And once you create this network, you complement what has been said about the embassies, because the embassies, they are diplomats, they can do that much, but you need to be able to speak to account. We are trying to create a network between the trading companies. It is one of the solutions.
Sure.
And there is one thing I want to respond to you. The AfCFTA is not the AfCFTA Secretariat. The AfCFTA is all of us. So it is a project. Everyone here is the AfCFTA. We are the AfCFTA Secretariat. We're sitting in the center trying to maybe create some initiatives, design some policies, but the AfCFTA responsibility is for everyone on all levels. So,
absolutely. I'm going to see if there's another question. You wanted to come in and answer my question. And I wanted to actually add another layer to a question that he raised earlier around contract manufacturing. But I'll hold it for now. Please come in.
Before I reply to your question, I just want to mention also what is very important is the skill. We was talking to, previously the skill, how to train them, and how to make possible for the training. We have here in Djibouti a center of training for logistic and maritime activities, built by the private sector and the PPP.
Sure.
Between private sector. And today, we are exporting the drivers that we train in this center to the Arab countries, like GCC countries. To tell you that if we couldn't get some jobs for our people, we have to train them and export them. If I come back to your question, how it might be, let's say, good that, as he said, my brother, AfCFTA is a project, is a vision. It's, I think, one of the successful, let's say, implementation that Africa must take care. And the way that we have to put in place our policy, it's to try making the union. Not each and every country must make his own, how we can say, law or...
There must be coordination.
We must be in coordination. And the role of the Secretariat is to put in place every year in one region. For example, we are in the East African region now. We must see what we have as advantage or disadvantage of AfCFTA. And what is disadvantage for the AfCFTA in East African region must be, how we can say it, corrected or try to make it possible to, how we can say it, readjusted.
Sure.
But if we keep as it is, and Uganda do whatever he want to do, and Djibouti do whatever he want to do, we will never success on our integration.
Absolutely. You need to answer the question around whether it's not just enough to be an exporter, you also need to be an importer, Felix. Oh, you want to answer it? Yeah, go for it. But it was raised to him,
I just want to add my point concerning, for example, for the import and export, the issue that we have today in intra-African
Yeah.
is we are importing all from abroad. We have to, as I said, we have to find a solution that we put in place this strategy that, and for example, the East Africa or intra-African or continental, in continental ways, we can export.
Yeah.
For example, we have coffee. You know that the coffee of Ethiopia was being stored in Hamburg port? Because Hamburg is the center of the coffees in the world.
Yeah, I have heard that story as well, how the coffee we're consuming in South Africa is coming from Belgium or one of the European ports, and yet
Hamburg.
it's not coming directly from us, from Hamburg, you say. Absolutely. Felix?
Yes, I'm an importer, exporter.
Okay. Is it easy? Does it work?
Yeah, it works quite, with the intervention of AfCFTA Secretariat, they really try to make things quite easy. At the moment, people are coming to understand the use of the AfCFTA Certificate of Origin. They have the e-tariff book that is now available for people just checking the tariff rates.
Yeah.
They have a harmonized rules of origin. So at the moment, I think they're at the point whereby you're not creating much more awareness for people to be able to use these particular tools.
Yeah, yeah.
But just to add on, maybe what I feel would be the most practical, some of the practical things that can actually be taken up. I've worked a lot with SMEs in this particular space. And the cost of supporting an SME from scratch to becoming, to having them get some product that is ready to go to the market and then developing an export strategy is very expensive. I'd urge, how can governments regain back the glory that we had in cooperative societies? See, cooperative societies build a concept whereby they bring SMEs who have a similar goal together. And an example would be, let me use Uganda, for example. There's a lot of banana production in Uganda. And if we were to say that we've set up or we are willing to invest in a plant that will absorb all the banana produced in a certain region. You see, one thing you've solved a crisis from the market, from the farmer perspective or SME perspective, because the SME focuses on one thing only, production of the bananas.
Absolutely.
Whatever you do with the bananas after you take them is not the SME's problem. Because at the moment what is happening, we're giving the SME the headache of getting the raw material, value adding the raw material, taking the raw material to the market.
Yeah.
It might not be very practical, or it may not take up, the motion as fast as possible. But if we are able to get to a point whereby the SEZs that we are setting up, if we are able to involve our cooperative societies inside the SEZ setups, whereby let's finance them to be able to industrialize inside the parks themselves.
Yeah.
They will create the demand for the raw material, and we'll have an output of a product that will be at a certain value.
Solutions.
Scale it up.
Solutions is what we're looking for. You want very quickly to chip in because I'm giving you the final mic.
Yes, just one input on export-import. I think to export at some products, you need also to import an intermediate input so that you produce final product and able to export to the market, whether it's Africa or beyond Africa. And I think if you look at the impact of President Trump's tariff, it also affects the global supply chain and the global value chain.
Sure.
And I think this is also good for us in Africa to export and make our intra-Africa trade so that you also have the intermediate good within the Africa before you go global and import. So that was my input.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Please help me to thank our panelists very much for a very, very interesting discussion. Rebecca, thank you for your time. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for your time. And thank you to all of you for listening.